Hey folks, welcome to the FaithSide. I'm Sam. I'm here with my buddy Andrew Lowen, and we are going to be just a couple of stupid little geeks talking about stuff. But hey, guess what? We're also Christians, and we're going to be talking about our faith as well. So that is that. Let's get into it.
All right. So there was from our last episode, there was a common theme of comments that that you were sharing with me. Why don't you introduce it, and then we can roll.
Absolutely. Well, we had, and again, we didn't have a whole lot of blowback on this, but there was some. And so what we want to do, what we're talking about this episode is humility. So out of humility, we want to address, and I guess maybe even address is kind of an argumentative word. And that's not really what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to bring to light, I guess, that some of the things that we talked about, people had differences with, and that's absolutely well and fine. So we wanted to talk about those differences that were brought up.
Is it too bad that I want to just own the noobs so that I'm right?
This is the right episode. That's what we should do. Okay. I don't know about owning any noobs. I think we should just go ahead and take a look at it.
This is the episode on why pride is fine and a good thing.
No, right? That's not correct. I think we need to start over.
Okay.
Okay. Now, take two.
Robert the AGY 925. He said, just to debunk something real quick, we don't use 10% of our brains.
There you go.
That is a myth created to disprove God and make ourselves seem like we could have godlike powers.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting point. In actuality, we use 100% of our brains. Our brains work differently from each other, meaning how we connect things together work differently, making some people smarter in different ways than others. My wife is brilliant when it comes to reading and remembering things. Her recall is fantastic. However, she thinks I'm smarter because I can remember processes. But then I can read something and remember a word or person's name. It makes interesting science fiction stories, but it's not true. Okay. Time to own this noob.
Here we go. Okay.
I'm kidding. So, yeah, so that, it's totally fine that it's a myth. It's more, I guess really my intent with that is just to explain what potential we have as redeemed creatures. The idea is this, that when we go to heaven, we're going to have greater, certainly, I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that we will have a greater capacity for knowledge, greater capacity for memory, greater capacity for understanding processes and other things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that you can, on Earth, the brain is like a muscle. I mean, you can train it and you can gain it, higher levels of knowledge. You can train yourself to remember names and patterns. And it's just really incredible, an incredible thing. And one other person mentioned that, if you were to damage any part of the brain, it hurts you. It reduces your capacity to do something, which makes sense. I guess what I really was trying to get at with that is what potential we have in the future. So right now, we're in the information age. I mean, really, it's the age of artificial intelligence now, where we have actually, I believe, a time that the Bible predicts, which talks about a time where knowledge will increase. It's like the last days, the end times are marked by a time where knowledge will increase. And actually, contextually, I believe that its knowledge of the scriptures will increase. And the fact that we actually have a Bible, like I just have a Bible on my phone that I can access. And I mean, it's incredible. The knowledge that we have at our fingertips. We are literally cyborgs because we augment ourselves with technology. I mean, it's wild. And Albert Einstein actually, I believe, has said that when he never would memorize something that he can look up. He would never memorize a fact that he could look up. He thinks that's a waste of time. And, there's a quote there. He says something to that effect. And so that means I don't need to memorize anything. I can look everything up. And I think that's actually how our brains start to work because there was a study done, and this is tangential, but it is relevant as well. So there was a study done where people went to the Louvre, which is a famous museum, and some people were given cameras and other people were not. And they were explicitly stated that they could not use cameras when they went into the Louvre. And then, of course, the people with cameras took pictures of things and whatnot. And then after both groups were done, they asked them questions about, the Mona Lisa and other things that were there. And the group with cameras remembered far less than the group without cameras, because, and their conclusion was that the people with cameras didn't commit things to memory because they have a picture that they can reference later. Yeah. Whereas the other people were like, this is the only time that I'm going to ever see the Mona Lisa, maybe. Yeah. And so they really studied what they're looking at. And as a result, they remembered a whole lot more. And I found that to be really amazing. The reason I kind of think about, the whole 10% of our brains thing, the reason that it's still amazing to me is, given our limited capacity as mortal people that live 100 years or less, typically, imagine what it'll be like when we live for an eternity. I mean, just imagine what would happen if you took somebody, let's use a different methodology for to arrive at the same exact place. So 10% of our brains debunked, but I use this idea of, like, if we used 100% of our brains, we had 100% potential use of our brains. That would be not just 10 times greater, it would be to the 10th power greater, right? Well, let's apply it in a different format and say, I live, instead of 100 years, I live 1,000. And I believe that the orders of magnitude, the exponential growth that I would be able to achieve as, in my lifetime is not 10 times more. It's 10 to the 10th power more. So, which, by the way, 10 to the 10th power is 10 billion. 10 billion times greater capacity for accomplishment, achievement, exploration, all the things that we care about in life. The reason that this gets me really excited is because that is what heaven is going to be like. So we have to do an episode on heaven. I have lots to say about it.
I'm sure you do.
But the concept is, like, if you live for eternity, then the Bible talks about when Christ comes into his kingdom on earth, that of the increase of his government, there will be no end. So I believe that it implies commerce. It implies that people get richer, and equity and equality, like, just the level rises, the rising tide raises all ships. So all people will be, increased to the end of, there will be no end of that increase. So our capacity for doing things like the Epstein drive from whatever that show was. What was the? I know, right? It's not Jeffrey Epstein, but there's this show that's awesome. It's like a sci-fi show. What is it called? Can't remember. Anyway, I know I'm gonna have people that are gonna own me and tell me the show. But it's kind of a gnarly show. But they basically. The show, there's a guy, his last name is Epstein, and he figured out how to go, like, hyperdrive and how to commercialize it. And everybody then is able to travel really, really fast through space as a result. And so that's why they were able to colonize Mars and then the asteroid belt and then the outer rim and other things like that. So not Jeffrey Epstein drive. It's the wrong kind of drive.
I didn't know where you're going there, bro. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing, Andrew?
That guy's definitely, I mean, what's crazy is that even a guy like Jeffrey Epstein, if he repented of his sin and believed in Christ, would be in heaven. But I'm pretty sure he's in hell. Well, I mean, I don't know.
You never know, right? But until we get there. Until we get there, we won't know. We can take, the Bible says, by their fruits you will know them, but it's that wild. Invitation's open until the moment you die, and we just don't know. So that's hard to wrap your head around. Somebody that did so many vile things here on earth, that if they accepted Christ at the last possible moment, they will be in heaven, just like the thief that was hung on a cross next to Christ.
So I guess to kind of wrap up the whole thing, when we go to heaven, of the increase of knowledge and learning and of commerce and the we'll say like the market, the free market or whatever, of the increase of that, there will be no end. I believe that there will be abundance and more abundance year after year, after decade, after century, after millennia of time, because I believe time as a concept will still exist in heaven. And even though we'll perceive it maybe differently because of the eternity is not something I believe that I can intrinsically fully grasp, as a human.
When you were talking, it reminded me of 1 Corinthians 13, starting in verse 9. Says, for we now, we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And then verse 12 says, for now we see in a mirror dimly, but then, talking about when we are in heaven, when the perfect has come, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. And then verse 13 concludes the chapter, and now abide faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. So the idea is that we're going to know things the way that we are known, and I believe the inference there is by God. And if you think about the very few tidbits that we can understand about how well God knows us, we will know, it seems to say, everything in that same manner. And so everything will kind of be put together. Even if it's just, I'll know myself the way I'm known, that blows my mind. Because, I cannot, I am not bald, by the way. I shave. So
me too.
I mean, I couldn't even begin to count the hairs on my head, but God knows them all.
The Bible says God numbers them all.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like every time one plucks out of my beard or one falls, one just doesn't grow back. He keeps tally of all of that. And it's interesting to me. I've always thought about that whole 10% thing is not we can become like God. It's always been a thing where, wow, God created this magnificent system that runs our bodies, and we only know how to tap into a fraction of its true ability. And it's always led me to the place of, look how awesome this machine is that God created. Additionally, I did do some reading up when those comments came up that you read earlier. There were others, but they basically all said the same thing in a general sense. And I did some reading up, and it is true that they say that now they're saying that we actually use 100% of our brain most of the time. And my only counter to that would be, because the stuff that I read didn't seem to touch on it as much. And again, I didn't do exhaustive research. I just looked into it, a few articles here and there. And they don't seem to delineate between conscious and unconscious use of your brain power. And
subconscious.
So did I say unconscious? Subconscious. Yes. Sorry. So the idea is, I'm not telling my brain to tell my lungs to keep breathing. I'm not telling my brain to tell my heart to keep pumping. I'm not doing that. That's running in the background, so to speak. So yes, we're using that part of our brain, but we're not consciously doing it. It's running on its own. So that would be my only other question to that. Not argumentative, purely just I wonder what scientists would say would be the difference there between cognitive usage and
like subconscious,
uncognitive or subconscious use of our brain power.
One thing I will say is that the subconscious mind moves 1,000,000 times faster than the conscious mind. It processes 1,000,000 times faster.
Yeah.
Like you have a Pentium processor up in the top of your brain, and then you have a quad core i9, in the bottom that you can't access.
You're such a nerd, dude. What the heck?
Yeah.
So
Multi-threaded when you're subconscious and then single thread, right? Especially for me, I'm like, I am hungry.
what are we
And
talking about? Are we
everything.
talking about sewing now? What is this?
That's processing power. Um, but yeah, it's really amazing. In fact, there's scientists have done a ton of research on the endocrine system. Endocrine system is like everything in like your gut.
Your
And
core.
yes, and they actually, some have called that the second brain, the secondary brain. So what happens is your endocrine system, you get this gut feeling. You get like this feeling inside that you don't quite understand, but you are like, I don't want to go down that dark alley, or I feel like I'm being watched, or I think I should pull the trigger on this business move, or think I shouldn't, or whatever. I think this person is untrustworthy, things like that. Your mind and endocrine system. So obviously your brain controls the way that your glands and your body produces stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the subconscious brain is processing a whole lot more, is taking in a whole lot more than you realize. So when like you and I are talking, and it's like, you've got something going on or whatever that I don't notice, but my body notices, like, hey, Sam is sad or whatever, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like if it's normal Sam versus if it's like Sam is deep in thought and trying to like cover it, my brain is going to figure that out. And I have this gut feeling of like, Sam needs a hug. So you might just get a random hug from a stranger because they just noticed that. One actually very real example for me is because I did this tournament recently, this jiu-jitsu tournament.
Yeah.
Whenever, like for about a month or 2 months leading up to the tournament, whenever I would think about the competition, I would think about like I'm just like, laying down for sleep, and like my head hits the pillow and I close my eyes, and then suddenly somebody shoots a takedown on me, and I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm in a match now, and your body does this thing, adrenaline like just spikes into your body from your heart, and your heart just starts pumping, and you hear it in your ears and everything. It's like, I've learned through many matches and competitions, I have to finish that match in my brain before my body can rest. So if I'm just like, I'm going to try to neglect that and ignore it, I have to actually, like, no, I counter his takedown with a sprawl. I grab his neck and finish with a guillotine choke, and he taps out. And then the referee raises my hand. And then the heart just goes like, oh, okay, I can relax now. It's fine. And, battle's over. And it's just something that happens, and I'm able to like get to sleep. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I did not do that, I would be up for the next hour trying to just like will myself to sleep, keep my eyes closed, and that kind of thing. So
that reminds me of well, first of all, you're psychotic, and I'm never going to mess with you ever. Second, that reminds me of I watch movies. I love watching movies, and they just something with the visual.
The Expanse, by the way. I'm sorry. Huh? The show is called The Expanse. Anyway, carry on.
The Expanse. Actually, that's a good show. That's a good show. Anyway, the
continue, Beltalanda.
Saving Private Ryan has a scene in there where the medic is talking about how the trick to going to sleep is trying to stay awake.
I remember that scene. Yeah,
because he it went back to a story about his mom. His mom worked late hours, and she always came home late, and he would always try to stay up so that he would be up when she came home, because she just wanted to give him a kiss goodnight, and that's all she wanted to do. But he always fell asleep, and no matter how hard he tried to stay up, he always fell asleep. And then he said there were a couple of times when she came home and he was still awake, and he acted like he was asleep. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I don't know why I did that, because he's this kid basically, and he's in the middle of war, and he basically just wants his mom again, Mm-hmm. And
one of the best movies ever.
Oh, absolutely.
If you want to get some humility, watch that.
Yeah, and while you're watching it, try to remember that these are basically 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who are doing mm-hmm. this.
Yeah.
Because they lied on their paperwork so that they could go fight for their country.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that lying's okay, but just that puts another kind of level of mm-hmm. wonder and amazement. Because, most 15, 16, 17-year-olds nowadays are not thinking about fighting for their country anymore.
Right.
Which is unfortunate. What's some other stuff you've been thinking about here recently, Andrew?
Oh man. So many things. Talking about Saving Private Ryan, for the last kind of family vacation that I took, my parents, my sister, and myself, they took us to England, France, and Scotland. And we did this little travel there and tour around and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the places that we had to go were the beaches of Normandy.
Wow.
And so I went to the beach, to Sword Beach. There were actually 5 beaches that the Allied forces had to take at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And there were lots of crazy stories, but standing on the beach, Omaha Beach is what it was called.
Yeah.
It was mind blowing. So like the scene in Saving Private Ryan, it's a very violent movie. If you haven't seen it,
yeah.
One of the best movies ever made, in my opinion, but also very violent. War, is hell.
Yep.
Movie. And so there, the scene where they D-Day, they invade Omaha Beach. The way that looked, and the big iron crosses, like giant jacks that were in the ground or in the water to make sure the boats couldn't pull up super far on shore,
or the tanks. Yep.
Yeah, that right there, it was a completely, like, that's really gnarly and scary. And you saw all the people like trying to get to the shore, and bullets are flying at them. The people are drowning because their equipment is too heavy and the water is too deep. All sorts of gnarly stuff. And then I went there like in real life when I think I was 20. And this is after I've seen the movie, after I saw Saving Private Ryan. And I was standing on the beach, and let me tell you, it's probably several hundred yards of like water that just starts out, it's like, it's not like a beach that has waves or anything. It's like this thin layer of water that just expands over time. And it's like, you go 100 feet out, it's still like calf deep. It's not very deep.
Right.
And so this is the beach that was hundreds of feet had to be charged up this beach.
Yep.
And you see like you turn around and you see like these cliffs where the bunkers are. The bunkers are still there. Yeah. And you can go and look inside them and that kind of thing. And it was just mind blowing to me actually being there.
Yeah.
I would say that one of the two most as actually a beach called Sword Beach was one of the most mind blowing places that I've been, but Omaha is really close. There's only between that and this is when you asked, this is what I was thinking about this week. I went to a Nazi internment camp when I went to Ukraine. I wrestled for Team USA and went to Ukraine and, wrestled in the Olympic training centers there. And one of the things that we did was, our coach, he was Jewish, named Valentin Kalika. He was a Jewish guy. And so we went to a concentration camp in Ukraine, and I stood at a mass grave. It was a giant trench. It was probably, I don't know, like 20, 30 yards deep. And it was just like a small valley that was super green, had all sorts of beautiful flowers and trees and stuff like that. I'm like, men, women, and children were thrown here. Yeah. And just, killed and thrown there. And that's probably the most severe memory I have, of war, standing on Omaha Beach, Sword Beach, standing at that concentration camp, mass grave, and 9/11 and Charlie Kirk were probably like some of the most vivid memories of, I just will never forget those moments in my life, where I was, what I was doing.
That's amazing. When we were visiting my daughter when she was still stationed in Germany, she's out of the Air Force now, but she was part of the Air Mobility Command there at Ramstein. And we went and visited for Christmas one time, and we took a trip down to Munich we ended up just going to Munich, staying overnight. We went and watched a Munich Red Bull hockey game, which was an exquisite experience. But anyway, before we went to the hockey game that night, we spent the day at Dachau. which is just outside of Munich. And it's the concentration camp that basically was the experiment first and then became the model for all of the other concentration camps during World War II. It's a surreal experience. Knowing what you know now happened in that very place. Sobering is the best word that I can come up with. That, you know, you're standing in these places that the Jewish people were held in just because they were Jews, and it's just amazing. And the squalid conditions. I don't know if that's a word. Is that a word? Squalor. They would have, you know, hundreds of men and or women stuck into these barracks, and I mean they're literally having to lay on top of each other in these places, and it was horrendous, and it was very eye opening. So yeah, it's very humbling. If I can try to shoehorn us back into what we're talking about, it's very humbling. It's very you're left with a sense of humility after you've been in a place like that. I'm really taken with this right here, right now. This is a course that we started. It's from the Patriot Academy. Rick.
Biblical Citizenship.
Biblical Citizenship in Modern America. And I'm looking for it's Rick Green, I want to say his last name is the author of this. But it's kind of a conglomerate of people that are, you know, partners, TPO Safe Faith, Wall Builders, Tim and David Barton, and then the Convention of States Action put this together. Patriot Academy is who actually put it together, and that's where you can go look into it. It's called biblicalcitizens.com. You can go take a look at it. But anyway, it's you know, I took a free online course from Hillsdale College about what it means to be a citizen, and it's a deep it's a deep dive, but it's kind of a superficial deep dive. I know those don't really make sense, but it's not like, I mean, it's basically an 8-part course that you can take online at your own pace. It's not like it's this huge endeavor, but it does go pretty deep back into history, as far as back into what it meant to be a citizen in the Greek polises, and what it meant to be a Roman citizen. It went back that far. And that was an interesting foundation. And when our church decided that they were going to do this as a class, we have free classes that you can do at our church that are run by different people in the community. And sometimes we bring in experts to run these different courses. We call it Life Track University. And so it's basically just a way for you to continue learning. When they had this up there, I was like, that sounds like something I want to learn about doing. I want to learn how to be a better citizen. And if I can learn how to be a better citizen by studying the Bible, then that's like 2 birds, 1 stone, you know? And week 1 is all about the foundation. There's a 40 to 45 minute video that we watch, and then we break up into smaller groups, and we talk about how, we talk through the notes that we took, and we talk through, different things that really impacted us from the video and that kind of stuff. And there were a lot of different quotes. One of them is from Noah Webster. Says, all the miseries and evils which men suffer from vice, crime, ambition, injustice, oppression, slavery, and war proceed from their despising or neglecting the precepts contained in the Bible. Another quote that, I mean, and again, you would probably, growing up, I'll put it this way, growing up, I never heard any pastor say anything near this, but Charles Finney in the Second Great Awakening said this: the church must take right ground in regard to politics. Politics are part of a religion in a country as this, and Christians must do their duty to their country as part of their duty to God. God will bless or curse this nation according to the course Christians take in politics. And I'm like, this guy was a preacher. He was an itinerant preacher during the Second Great Awakening. And this is, you would never hear pastors say something like this. I I asked our group, I said, when is the last time you had heard a pastor say that? And I'm looking around the group and I'm like, these are all members of our church. I'm like, oh, last Sunday, sorry.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. But James 4:17, then I'm just reading down the page here. It says, if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. And then finally, and this is the last, this is just what's right here in the front 10% of my brain. Sorry, I think to pull that back. Because we just went over it last night.
You're just using that percent right now.
Yeah, I'm just using
other
that
percents
much
later.
right now. we're not mocking. We're just joking. That's all. All right. So George Mason. Do you know who George Mason is? Have you ever heard his name before?
Yeah, I have, but I don't know why I can't place him.
Don't know why. Okay, I never heard of him before, but apparently he was part and parcel to the writing of the Declaration of Independence, but he did not sign it. But a lot of the things that are in the Declaration of Independence, he was at the forefront of making sure was in the Declaration of Independence. He did not sign the Declaration because for two reasons. First of all, it didn't outright condemn slavery. And second of all, it did not have a Bill of Rights yet. And that's why he did not want to put his name on that document. But he was there for the entire thing.
Yeah.
That was interesting to me. Another thing that was interesting to me, I was watching Glenn Beck the other day, and he actually had a copy. If you don't know who Glenn Beck is, he's the guy that does I think it's the Blaze podcast or the channel, whatever it is. And he actually has a rather extensive personal collection of documents that are actual real documents. And he actually has a copy, not a copy. He actually has, well, I don't know exactly what it is because I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen videos of him actually reading a original draft, like the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, in which slavery was condemned. And, but it didn't stick because every line of the declaration had to be ratified individually. Everybody had to unanimously agree that this was going to stay in the thing. And because of two of our colonies, Georgia and I believe South Carolina, the lines that were about the abolishment of slavery were done away with. So, but that's in the original document. Anyway, the quote from George Mason says, "No free government, nor the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people but by a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles." And I am super looking forward to the rest of this. It's going to be a 6-week thing. We're going to take 3 weeks, and then we're going to take a break for Easter, Afterglow, and then we're going to have another 3 weeks. And it's just, my wife and I both are very, very happy to be able to take part of it. But
that's awesome.
That's part of what I'm doing at our church. But it's just good stuff. All right, so humility. Again, like I said last time, I like to take a descriptive look at what we're doing here, and so what I'd like to do is just provide a brief definition that we can work from. I'm on blueletterbible.org, and if we go to the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, we just put in the word humility in the verse or word search engine, and then we click on the dictionary entries. And I think with this word, it came up with 12 different entries, which means that there are 12 different books that have information about this word. And this is from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. In the Old Testament as well in the New Testament, humility is an essential characteristic of true piety or of the man who is right with God. God humbles men in order to bring them to himself. And it is when men humble themselves before him that they are accepted. If we go down a little bit further, it says Jesus not only strongly impressed his disciples with the need of humility, but was in himself its supreme example. He described himself as meek and lowly in heart. The first of the Beatitudes was to the poor in spirit, and it was the meek who should inherit the earth. Humility is the way to true greatness. he who should humble himself as this little child. We'll be coming back to that in Matthew 18 in just a minute. Paul also makes an earnest appeal to Christians that they should cherish and manifest the spirit of their Lord's humility in lowliness of mind, each counting other better than himself, and adduces the supreme example of self-emptying of Christ. He have this mind which was in you, which is also in Christ Jesus, and so forth. But he also warns about a false humility in Colossians chapter 2. So hopefully that gives us a little bit of a trajectory that we want to talk about here.
There's a very practical application to this, but my favorite definition of humility was given by C.S. Lewis in a book called Mere Christianity. C.S. Lewis explains, I found a quote, "Do not imagine that if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all."
Right.
And so the way that I would define it, or Mere Christianity defines it, as kind of the way that I've adopted my own view of how do I define humility? Humility is not thinking less of yourself, meaning like I'm not a good person and that kind of thing. It's thinking of yourself less. Yeah. So I think that practically, when, like, imagine you go to a party and you're thinking about, your outfit and like what you're wearing, and hopefully people think it's cool. Like, I've got my Love Thy Nerd merch on right now. Hopefully people like it. You start to become very self-conscious if you're thinking about yourself, and it makes you nervous to connect with people and that kind of thing. Now, alternatively, if you stop thinking about yourself entirely and you're like, I see Sam over there and he looks like he's by himself, I'm going to walk over and talk to him and make sure he has a good time. You stop, actually, you're not thinking about, I'm not thinking about myself at that point at all. I'm only thinking about, I want Sam to have a really good time. Yeah. I'm not going to be self-conscious anymore. I'm going to be more confident in myself during that party, just carrying myself at the convention or whatever. Like one of the most important things when I go to a convention with Deliverance, I recognize, like, I'm kind of like a spectacle for a lot of people, where and maybe you feel like this too because you're very well known in the board game space, where you're like, a lot of people that see you, they're like, I've watched your videos for years and years, and now I get to meet you. And there are many Deliverance fans that come to the Deliverance booth that are like, hey, you're the designer of the game I like. And they are gonna, like, all of them come wanting to shake my hand and meet me and talk to me and tell me what they love and whatnot. And my job, that I kind of see my role, is to make sure that they have a great time. My job isn't to sell games. Right. It's to celebrate the thing that we all love together and make sure that those people have a great time. Yeah. And then they leave, and then the next person, and then really you kind of, like, at a convention behaving that way, you kind of pour yourself out, and you feel like drained and empty at the end of the day, and you need to get a good meal and a good, night's sleep, and then come be ready to do it again. Yep. But for me, it's so exhilarating and exciting to just engage with people that are friends and fans and whatnot, that and I just am able to kind of be silly and be myself without having to worry about, I hope I don't have a piece of broccoli stuck in my teeth, or that kind of thing, because I don't care if I do or not. Sure. It's not about me, it's about them. If the weird Deliverance guy has a piece of broccoli stuck in his teeth, I'm not going to tell him. I don't want to be mean to him or whatever. Hopefully you will tell me, I appreciate that.
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, please tell me. That's like, that's like one of the true markings of respect and or love, is that if you see somebody that is not aware of something that's happening to them, then you let them know. Yeah. And that can get you into some sticky situations. I get it. Or maybe sticky is the wrong word, awkward situations. But again, you're thinking, I think that's actually a little bit applicable, because in that situation, if Andrew has broccoli stuck in his teeth, it would actually be kind of the humble thing to say, hey, I know this is awkward, but you've got some broccoli in your teeth, and I don't want you to, have somebody else, go all day with this broccoli in your tooth. So but yeah, that's an interesting thing. Some of the passages that were brought up as I looked into this idea of humility. With the word humility, at least in the King James version, that it's not actually used a whole lot. Because one of the cool things that Blue Letter Bible does, and let me say this, I'm not sponsored by Blue Letter Bible. I just really, 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 really like it. And I've used it for a very long time, and it's been very useful. So every time I talk to anybody about Bible apps or websites or whatever, I try to point them to this one because I think it's one of, if not the best. I know that there are
If the
others
Blue
out
Letter
there
Bible guys are listening,
huh?
if the Blue Letter Bible guys are listening,
I doubt it. I really do. I really doubt it. Anyway,
we'll
it
take a
brings up
sponsorship.
seven times where humility is used in verses in the King James version, and they're all pretty short. So let's just go ahead and hit them. Proverbs 15:33 says, "The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility." And that seems backwards for us if you're really kind of honored, if you're really kind of honest with yourself, because we usually want to think that in order to gain honor, you have to not be humble. You have to be, maybe assertive would be a word that comes out, and all this other kind of stuff. But it says before honor is humility.
Disagreeable in a lot of ways.
Right. Proverbs 18:12 says, "Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility." So there we go again. Proverbs 22:4, "By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life." Acts 20, verse 19, "Serving the Lord with all humility of mind and with many tears and temptations which befell me by the lying in the way of the Jews." Colossians 2:18, "Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility." It's that voluntary or that fake humility that Paul was warning Christians about. "Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshiping of angels, intruding into those things which he has not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind." So I think that's something we should probably come back and talk about. It continues, though, a couple verses later in 23. He says, "Which things have indeed a show of wisdom in will worship and humility and neglecting of the body, not in any honor to the satisfying of the flesh." First Peter 5:5 says, "Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yea, all of you, be subject one to another, and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble." What do you think of those?
That's awesome. The last one, if you think about clothe yourself in humility, and if we use the definition that I shared of like you're not thinking of yourself at all, but you're thinking about the people around you, I think that is really a mirror of Christ at the Last Supper, when Christ took the lowliest position, washing his disciples' feet.
Mm-hmm.
That was the ultimate act of humility. It's like, dude, the King of the universe is washing my dirty, stinky feet.
Yeah. That was usually a task that was reserved for the lowest servant in the household. This was something that not even, because if you think about it, people wore sandals back then, and there was not asphalt,
and they walked everywhere. Yeah,
they walked everywhere. Their feet were calloused, nasty, dirty. We think of feet today, and it's like you take your shoes off, and you're like, ugh. Like me personally, I think feet are the ugliest thing ever. And it's like gross. It's nasty. Don't touch me with your feet. Don't put your feet in my face. Don't. And people in my family like to joke around. It's not, well, one in particular, my son Aiden. He loves to push that button. So it's like, but by comparison, we have pristine feet probably compared to those that Jesus washed. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is literally, I think, at least in my estimation, because I hate feet. I hate touching feet. Ugh, I don't even like touching my own feet. Anyway, that is like the pinnacle of humility. And I've never done it, and I probably will be challenged to by the Lord in some way, shape, or form in the near future now that I've said this. But it's just one of those things that is like the pinnacle of humility, in my opinion. Yeah. That if you are willing to get down on your hands and knees and wash my feet, I am definitely the Peter. No, you don't want to wash my feet. Do not wash my feet. You do not need to be washing my feet, Lord. And then he comes back with, if I don't wash your feet, then you have no part with me. And then I'm like, okay, well then I'll take a shower then, wash every
Mhm.
part of me. It's just one of those things.
I also think that humility is receiving, and like this, for example, as an act of humility, you received the contribution from that benefactor that enabled us to even do this podcast.
Yeah.
If you were too prideful to receive, then we would not have this podcast. And who knows how many episodes it'll be, how influential it'll be on people or whatever. But with that one act of humility, which is receiving something, you, I believe, certainly rose to the occasion, are doing good things that I'm personally happy to see with it. But we as people, I think, in it's false humility to say, no, you don't have to do that. No, you don't have to. But just like a child to receive something. If somebody wants to give you something, is it humbling to turn them away? Is it humble of you to turn them away, or is it prideful of you to turn them away?
Right.
And what if God is sending that person to give you something and you're telling God no? Like, that's the dumbest, most prideful thing you could do, right?
Yeah.
And so something I think about is the way we receive is shows humility. I also believe that simply humility is not something that you feel. It's something that you practice. It's something that, like, you're not going to be good at first. And you'll need to practice humility. Like Proverbs kind of talks about, riches and honor come after humility, right? And so humility is like saying, all right, I don't have very many life skills right now. I need to go figure out, like, I need to go get a job in food service at McDonald's or whatever. And then eventually you may know how to manage a restaurant. You may be elevated over time. You're a shift manager and then a manager, and then you get another job at Olive Garden, and then you're a manager there, and then you're the general manager of your friend's restaurant now, and then you start your own restaurant, and you start a chain of restaurants, and then you sell those, and you become a high-level corporate executive for McDonald's. But like, that doesn't happen just because you are awesome and God wants to bless you with a CEO position or whatever, but you flip burgers. Like, there are a lot of people that are very wealthy will have humble beginnings. My mom started out as somebody who was like a horribly abused, extremely poor, destitute child. Her story is super inspiring to me because of where she came from and where she is now. In a very successful business and all that.
You said something a little bit ago where it's something that you can learn. And you know what? When you said that, I was like, yeah, that's true. But to an extent, I don't think that you can set out to learn humility. I think it comes with, I think you might have a desire to be humble. It's more of a thing that comes with, and that, you don't, you said earlier, it's not thinking about yourself, right? It's thinking about yourself less. It's not thinking that you are less, it's thinking of yourself less. So it's like, if I'm constantly thinking about how am I going to be more humble, then that's kind of missing the boat a little bit. At least the way my brain's firing right now, it seems to me missing the boat a little bit. If I'm always constantly thinking, how can I become more humble? I'm focusing on myself. I'm not focusing on other people, which is the kind of the definition of what humility is. And so I think it's something that we don't set out to learn, but it's something that the Lord kind of puts into us through those different times that we have chosen to submit to his guidance, rather than something that we can, for lack of a better term, academically learn how to do or be humble. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think that the primary mechanism for humility is the yoke. And by the yoke, I mean the instrument that you put on a bull or an ox to get it so that it will work. And I think that the Bible talks about it is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have to work, if I have to, I mean, I remember there were times where, like, when I just got married, where I wasn't able to afford like anything nice for my wife at all. Like,
Mm.
our idea of a fun time was a monthly World of Warcraft subscription, and on the weekend we would walk to the local convenience store, spend $4 in change that we had scraped and found on the ground, and things that we would put in a coin jar on it, like a Snickers bar and an energy drink.
Yeah.
And that was like the best. I couldn't afford nice makeup for her.
Yep.
It was really tough for me, because she was, she would do her best to get pretty and everything. It's like, man, if she just had like what she wanted, what she needed, then it would feel so much better. And I just feel so rotten that I can't provide things like that, like simple things like that.
Yeah.
And that drove me to, I'm like, I need to make more money, and it drove me to do that. Why? Not for me, but for her. I can give up on myself and live with that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind failing on myself.
Right.
But if failing means that other people suffer that are depending on me, heck no, I'm not going to, I can't fail because I'm not going to let them down. I'll let myself down because, I love me. I'll still love me anyway, but I cannot look them in the eye and say, I'm quitting. I think that if we make our goals about those that we love and benefiting others, that we act in humility in accordance with what our goals are in life. I need to make money, not for me so that I can have a nice car, but for my family so that they can have a good upbringing and all of that. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that comes back to 1 Peter 5, where it talks about being subject one to another. That the idea of submission, the idea of subjecting yourself to somebody else, often, I won't say usually, but it often goes hand in hand with this idea of being humble, being humility. And often the person we're told to put ourselves in submission to is the Lord. 1 Peter 5:6, right after 1 Peter 5. Well, just to read both of them. Likewise, you younger, submit yourselves to the elder. Okay, so that's the first, the idea of submission and humility being tied together. We need to submit ourselves to people who have walked where we're walking before. All of you, he continues, all of you be subject one to another. Okay, so we're not only supposed to submit ourselves to the elders, but we're also supposed to submit ourselves to each other. And then it continues, and be clothed in humility, for God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. Verse 6 says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. And there's that idea of submission again, that he may exalt you in due time. And so there's the idea there that if we are submitting ourselves, if we are practicing being submissive, it doesn't mean that we're pushovers. It doesn't mean that we are passive, but it does mean that we think of other people first before we think of ourselves. That's where we should be living. And if we find it that way, it says that the Lord will exalt you in due time. And I think that's the idea of, we don't learn how to be humble. We practice submission. And after we have a life that practices submission, we don't find, other people find that we are humble.
I was going to say, have you ever heard of the phrase being promoted to your highest level of incompetence?
Do you mean
it's like a corporate job kind of thing?
You're promoted into a position that you have no idea of how to work.
Right. But you were really good in the position before. So like the idea is like you're a really, really good worker. So you get promoted to the manager, and you're a really, really good manager. So you get promoted to like the area manager, and you suck.
No idea
as the area manager. You're like trying to manage managers, and you do not have that skill set. But because you were excellent in the position previous, you're the one that's promoted to that position. And then because you kind of languish in your other position, you're now, that's like your ceiling in that company. They're like, well, we don't want to promote him to like the vice president or whatever, because like he's kind of messing up and he's causing the most, his division is like the one with the most problems or whatever. So I think I apply this to how God works in my personal life
Mm-hmm.
with the things that he's called me into.
Yeah.
So one of the, we can talk about like God's calling and, on another podcast, like how do you know God's calling you to do a thing or whatever.
Right.
But God called me into becoming a Christian game designer. So I made this Christian game. I make other Christian games. I'm making other Christian games. And the initial like kind of bait that I feel like a lot because I do a lot of marketing for other Christian games, like all sorts of different games. And one of the bait lines that everyone always says is like, when I'm starting to work on this project, this Deliverance or whatever, if it just impacts one person's life, then it's worth it, right? But what I really want inside is I want my game to make $20 million. I really want it to like reach the ends of the earth and get onto the table of like all of the world leaders at the UN, and then have all the world leaders convert to Christianity because of my game and how good I am. And Nebuchadnezzar saying, look at this kingdom I have built with my two hands. What a wonderful thing has happened because of my Christian game. That's what I really want to have happen. But I'll say, well, if it just helps one person, then it's all worth it.
It's false humility.
Reality is like, my ambitions are much higher than that, but my false humility is saying, I want to appear lowly, but so for myself, I actually would say all the time, I'm not a humble person. I am like, I tell that to myself. It's like, in a way, it's a humbling thing to say, to admit I'm not a humble person. I have to be stamped into the right shape by God. I don't like being molded and formed by my creator. I want to do my thing. And it hurts when you heat me up and pour me in and scrape all the imperfections off. I don't like that.
We're going to put you in this pot. We're going to heat you up 7 times, scrape a little bit off of you, and then heat you back up again. And that's comfortable, right? That's what you want. I don't think anybody enjoys submission.
After, I went through this long journey, and then I released the game into the world, and to see how it impacted people, that was the humbling thing.
Right.
That like after, I made it. And really the key was I did my absolute best. And we're talking about kind of relating back to the highest degree of incompetence. There were many, many occasions on the development of Deliverance where it was like, for example, there's this character, Christine, who is modeled after my wife. And Christine had a little like cleavage, little side boob showing on, cause she's in like this Greek toga. That was the very first art piece, one of the first art pieces. It really wasn't bad or anything, but it was something that like my artist is like, he's a Christian, he's actually Catholic. And he just as an artist, he's done all sorts of things. Like he's in art school. He's had to do like the naked body and other things and like to get proportions correct and all sorts of stuff. He's gone through all kinds of training. And I'm like, my wife actually is my art director. And she's like, that's a little revealing. Like we need to have like some extra clothing there.
More fabric.
Yeah, more fabric. And also like her dress is kind of high. It's like upper thigh length dress.
Yeah.
We need to bring that to like lower thigh length dress. And things like that were things I actually resisted. It's like, it's not a big deal, like it's fine. And then there was another character also in this latest expansion we're developing. It's a character that was very like, one of my rules is if I make a female character in my game, I do not want my female fans to cosplay the female demons. It's like one of the things I think about. And if they're beautiful and attractive and that kind of thing, people are going to, and if they have a really cool outfit, like Kerrigan from StarCraft or whatever, they're going to want to cosplay Kerrigan. I didn't want people to be wearing like scantily clad succubus outfits to cosplay Deliverance characters.
Right.
And, my wife is like, hey, we need to, add this, change that, smaller bust size, more fabric, all those kind of things. And, to my shame, I'm like, it's not that big a deal, or it's, and I kind of resist those things. Of course, my wife is always right when it comes to this type of stuff. And so we make those changes, and it costs more money to do that. It's like when the art piece is done, to have an artist to work on it more costs more money. It takes more time. And really, it's like we have, come a very long way. But that type of thing is God whispering to me, hey, son, make this adjustment. Fine detail. Like, we're into the fine details. And if I'm like, you know what, wife, I think that it's fine. What I'm really saying is, you know what, God's servant who's delivering me a little message, I'm not going to listen to God. Just tell him that for me. Yep. And therefore, I would reach my highest degree of incompetence.
Yep.
I would release a game that maybe a lot of people would like, and the Lord would be like, all right, I gave you a chance. I gave you a shot. You didn't rise to every occasion that I wanted you to rise to. You compromised.
Yeah.
You're at your highest degree of incompetence.
Yep.
That is what I do not want. I want to be like, Lord, use me. I will obey you in all things. And so this thing that you've put in my life that I have to, walk in such a way that is so scrutinized, I will walk in that way. Yeah. That's something that is in my personal life has, really, humility sometimes is getting hit over the head with a baseball bat. That's what it feels like. It's like, you idiot. Let's do this.
It's like the joke that a kid walks into a doctor's office and says, I just broke my leg in 4 places. And the doctor says, well, stop going to those places. It's interesting. And we'll close on this. I want to get back to Matthew 18, but something you just said is something I just read this morning in Oswald Chambers. It is for his March 17th entry. And it's talking about, it says the title of the thing is the workers' ruling passion. And it's from 2 Corinthians 5:9, where it says, wherefore we labor that we may be accepted of him. There's ellipses in there. There's more to that, but that anyway, it says this, wherefore we labor, it is arduous work to keep the master ambition in front. It means holding oneself to the high ideal a year in and year out, not being ambitious to win souls or to establish churches or to have revivals, but being ambitious only to be accepted of him. It is not the lack of spiritual experience that leads to failure, but lack of laboring to keep the ideal right. Once a week, at least, take stock before God and see whether you are keeping your life up to the standard he wishes. Paul is like a musician who does not heed the approval of the audience if he can catch the look of approval from his master. And when you were talking about, I could have made a game that people would have liked, but I would have missed the approval of my Father in heaven. That's the difference of that. And as we go back to Matthew 18, Matthew 18:1 says, at the same time the disciples came the disciples to Jesus, saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus called a little child unto him and set him in the midst of them. It's like, wow, speechless answer to question, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And then verse 3 says, and said, verily I say unto you, except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receives me. And so the idea of humility is attributed to this little child in Matthew 18. And, I think that's part of the problem for a lot of people. They don't want to humble themselves in light of the simplicity of the gospel. The gospel says, John 3:16, for whosoever believeth on me shall be saved. It's that simple. There's not more that has to go into that. I've been talking to a guy, and it's been a very cordial conversation, not heated at all. Just one of those kinds of conversations that we're just not seeing eye to eye. And I don't think it's because there's miscommunication. We're on two different levels of understanding, and I don't say that to make my level of understanding seem higher, because I think he's super smart, like very good at argumentation, very good, has a very logical, reasonable mind. And what I've said to him often is that it seems like you're just tripping over yourself here. You're you've got to get back to, in Revelation it says you've lost your first love, so you need to remember and do the first things. Those first things, at least one of them, and I think probably the most important one, is humility.
Yeah.
Seeing yourself the way God sees you and submitting yourself to that authority before you can move on from there. And if you don't do that first thing, even though it might seem like you're moving forward, you're learning all of these things, you're gaining this knowledge and that knowledge, but you're never really coming closer to Christ because you haven't taken that step of humility first. Somebody said it, and I can't remember where I read it. It might have been on Blue Letter Bible, but the first, second, and third most important thing about Christianity is humility, humility, and humility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true.
Yeah. You know what I think about? I think that having children, especially I don't know what it feels like as a woman, but as a man, it changes you significantly. And one of the things that I find so funny is how I, as a father to my children, mirror how God acts to me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, and vice versa, how I should act toward the Lord is how my children, when they're little, act toward me. One of the things that I'm so amazed by is my children's implicit trust in everything I do and say. Like my teenager may be different, but
I was just thinking, you just wait a few years, pal.
Yeah. Well, she's still awesome. She loves Daddy. She thinks I'm invincible, but
that's good.
But like my little 4-year-old or my little 6-year-old, like if I lead them someplace, they have 100% trust, no doubt whatsoever, that wherever I'm taking them, that's where they need to go, and that's what we need to do, and something good is waiting for them, or they have to just do what they need to do there. They're responsible for doing something. I don't know, but this implicit trust is what we need to have in God.
Yeah.
We need to have this. So I think that sometimes I like to figure things out. I like to know things. I like to study, and I love science, and I love math, and I love logic and reason, and I love, the laws of physics, and, all sorts of nerd things. I think that sometimes, to your point, that we can educate ourselves into stupidity when you forget your fundamentals. When you constantly relate back, and I am of the mind that you're not an expert in something unless you can explain it simply. So, it's to a little child, like, how can you explain such a complex thing to a little child? Well, the little child doesn't care about the complexity. The little child trusts you.
Yeah.
Just tell me it is.
Yep. And it's important to note, when we talk about coming back to fundamentals, when we talk about going back and doing the first things, like the Book of Revelation tells us, we're not talking about living there. I think there is a definite need for growth. I believe it's Paul that put it, we don't need to be always desiring the milk of the word, but we need to get to where the meat is as well.
Right. You build a foundation, and you got to build structure on that foundation.
You've got to build the proper foundation first, and you grow from there. And it comes back to that George Mason quote. And the idea is frequent recurrence, not living in the fundamental principles, but reminding ourselves frequently, recurrently, about those fundamental principles that is needful. I think part of that is going to help us. And again, not that we're trying to do it, not that we can do it in and of ourselves, but I think part of that is continually looking back on how we used to be, and how far God's brought us.
So that's a good. I want to say it's a good conclusion to end on with our discussion of humility. But I have another question for you.
Okay.
As a result of what you said, and it's more of a practical application.
Sure.
So for me, I think about, like, give me 3 practical, fundamental things that you rely on when things go wrong in your life. What do you go back to that is like your foundation, like your grounding. I'll give you an example of mine, like one of mine. God is good. God is good.
Okay.
Therefore, he's not letting me go through this situation,
right?
Because he's just a rotten, spoiled little child sitting on a throne doing what he wants, playing with his toys, like the child with the ant farm analogy.
Yeah.
But he is good, and so this will turn out for my good, even though the enemy means it for evil. So that's like one example. So give me two more.
Yeah. Well, I think another one is God is right, and just to follow that format that you've provided. God is good. God is right. I would imagine that the next one would be God is in control, because sometimes it very much feels like he isn't. We see those pictures of the little girl that's on a roller coaster, and she's like, and Jesus is sitting right next to her with his big old smile on her face, that kind of thing. And it very much feels like things are just not in control, but we have to remember that God is in control. Or maybe if we want to use a more high-minded word, we can use sovereign. God is sovereign. God is just. Instead of saying that God is right. So not only does he love me and care for me, and not only is he good, but he's also just, which means that all of the things that he does is good and has a proper purpose for us. And he is in control. There's nothing that comes down my path where, God runs into the room like Kramer. What happened? I didn't know where you were going with it, but now that you gave me that first thing, that's definitely three things that I have to constantly remind myself of, because often we get into situations we can't see what's coming up around the rise. We can't see what's coming up around the corner. But God already has, and he's already there waiting for us. And he's gone before.
Tell me about what game are you playing this week? What are you thinking about?
Well,
and why is it Battle of Hoth?
No, it's not Battle of Hoth. Okay. You shut up. Let's see. What game? Oh, you know what? We just played the Puerto Rico 1897 special edition. A buddy of mine got his copy in, and he went the whole nine as far as that's concerned. He got everything that could possibly be deluxeified. He got it deluxeified. So we got to play that last Friday, and I got creamed because I did not get production going as fast as Doug and JT did, but it was a pretty close game between those two. But it was really fun. I mean, the production quality is beyond deluxe as far as I'm concerned in that game. So that was a really fun experience, though. It was a return to what I would consider a modern classic, and it's so smooth, and it kind of reminded me of, back when this originally came out, I was like, this is boring, because I was like, I want conflict, I want some dice rolling, I want to do this, I want to do that back then, but now after, my gaming tastes have kind of evolved over the years, I still like that stuff, but I can appreciate better or more now the more cranial exercises of the games that have puzzles in them, and you got to figure out how this engine's going to work and all that kind of stuff. It was a very enjoyable experience, and I got creamed, but I had a good time playing it. So awesome. That was that Puerto Rico 1897 special edition. Okay. What about you?
So I have been playing a game called Iridia for The Paths We Dare Tread for the last, I don't know, since it delivered. Maybe that's 4 months or 5 months or for a very long time. Yeah. Almost every weekend, at least one session, sometimes weekdays. I actually have a board game table that has, like, when I moved into this house, we went to this consignment place in San Antonio that had a bunch of basically rich people drop their stuff off and they'd sell it for super cheap. Yeah. And there was this table that made no sense to me. It's got like these slats of like planks of wood and not like a solid top. Yeah. I'm like, that looks like a board game table, but I don't see anything that would indicate that it is. Yeah. Until I found this little suction cup thing in one of the drink holders, and I suction cupped one of the boards off, and it was a felt surface. And I bought that thing. It was $500, fully custom, big, epic, huge table. What? It was amazing, dude. Amazing. Fine. That's crazy. And so we have that. So Iridia is like constantly set up underneath that table. Yeah. And I probably put in, I don't know, maybe 150 hours into that game so far, something like that.
Wow.
My wife and I, and we're like almost level 9 in the game out of level 10. You know, we're 3/4 of the way through the game, something like that. And I had this experience. So on Friday night, we were tired and we were like, we're going to play Iridia. And we just got into this boss fight that was it was like the Balrog. The foe was beyond us and we got slaughtered. And I got like all like butt hurt because my wife was like, you know, I was like, oh, did you notice there was this particular thing the guy does? And, you know, maybe you want to rethink your move. And she's like, no, I'm not rethinking anything.
Don't forget, Andrew, it's a game.
I know. We're like, oh, I was all grouchy about it. And so we died. And then we didn't clean the game up or whatever because it was late and we went to bed. And then the next day we come back, you know, we made up, you know, we're like, you know, I forgive you. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry for my part and being grouchy, you know. And then the next day we come back and we're like, well, we died. So that's never happened before. So we have to figure out. And the Iridia is like, it's kind of like what an RPG should feel like, where you make choices, you can like role play, you know, you find a point of interest. Here are 3 things about it, little short description. And like, it's kind of like Dead of Winter where you're reading a card and you ask them to make choices. But instead of asking them to make choices, you kind of emphasize, you know, there's a bubbling brook with something shiny over there. And then you see some white aspen trees in the distance. And it seems like there's a path that goes through the trees. And it's like, well, let's look at the shiny thing in the brook, or what about the aspen trees, or what about the path, you know? So you kind of give the, you know, the prompts, and then you look at the back of the card and it's like, if they say path, then, you know, read this line and whatever. And you might actually discover things or get rewards and, you know, that kind of thing. And so anyway, we are defeated and we're like, well, we don't know what that does. We'll look in the rule book and it's like draw event 999. And there are like several, like over 1,000 cards. Yeah. And, you know, in the box. And so I pull event 999. It's like draw medium map tile 999. And there are like over 400 map tiles that are artfully laid out and everything. It's crazy. Wow. The amount of this game is massive. Yeah. And so we pull that out and there's this like death, like the boatman, you know, from like the river Styx, and pull the NPC out. And he's like, yeah, you guys shouldn't be here yet. Here are some boons to help you for next time. And we got these like super overpowered boons. It was so cool. This death experience, like we're in the afterlife, and then we go back and you know, end up like reviving, and there are rules for that it walks you through in a really cool way. Yeah. And so we go back to this fight and we're so invested now. We're like, we know we have a strategy. We know what's going to happen. We're going to go for it again with these extra boons. We might stand a chance. And by the skin of our teeth, we beat that fight. It was so cool. And it was, you know, hats off to Cody. What's his name? Far Off Games, Ira Fey, and Cody Miller. You know, Cody Miller is the designer of Iridia. Ira Fey helped him. He did Zia, Legends of a Drift system and everything. But that experience was so great. So cool. That's cool. To be able to experience that, like, and you know, what's crazy about it is that's like 3/4 of the way through the game. Of like 150 hours required or 100 hours required to get there. Yeah. Most people will never get there and experience that because if you buy the game, you might play 30 hours and be like, oh, that's a great one. But you never get there. Like Tom Vassell actually said that was his like #1 game of 25 or something. Really? Yeah. And, you know, I don't know how much he's played, but hopefully he didn't, you know, get spoiled. Hopefully he died already and got to experience that before he listened to this. I don't know. But, it's like, man, all this content that they made is for like such a tiny group of people that will make it to the end, you know. But Iridia is an extremely memorable experience. It's like it's a legacy game that you can reset so you can play through it again. But you definitely do not want to play 2 groups going through the game at the same time. You will not be able to do that. Wow. So yeah, buy 2 games, buy 2 Iridias, you know.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah, you don't want to run 2 groups at the same time. Gotcha. So because you like get rid of cards and stuff like permanently, which you just slot them in. But anyway, super fun game. It's it's good for like role players that you can be like the marksman, you know, ranger. You can be the warrior, the priest, the mage, the rogue. You know, those kind of archetypes. You've got ways to level up and get you know, kind of customize your skill sets based on who else is with you. So my wife and I are like rogue and marksman, and the rogue is not super tanky, but I can go stealth and make people think that I'm in a spot that I'm not. So they attack, they, hit their axe into the ground and I'm not there. They thought, that kind of thing. So really fun game.
That's cool.
Highly recommend it.
All right.
Very expensive. Aridia.
All right. So that is Puerto Rico 1897 Special Edition and Aridia. So go check those out. And that's about it we have for you today. This week, we thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciate it. Now, your call to action is, what are the 3 things that you have to rely upon? You have to come back to. What are your fundamental things that you return to when you get into a sticky situation in your walk with Christ? Or maybe if you're honest with yourself, maybe you don't come back to some of the things that you probably should. Be honest with that as well. We'd love to hear from you, see what you think. And we want to thank you for being here. We appreciate your time and effort in listening. And we will see you on the next one. Take care. See you on the FaithSide, folks.